Hello friend, welcome to Science for Sleep. Tonight, we're going to spend some time with one of the gentlest creatures many of us know by sight, but rarely stop to understand. Butterflies are so familiar that it can be easy to take them for granted. They drift through gardens, cross quiet fields, pass over summer paths, and settle for a moment on flowers that seem to suit them perfectly. They can feel like small pieces of color moving through the air. Soft, light, simple. But the closer we look, the stranger and more beautiful they become. And before we go any further, if you enjoy slow, peaceful videos like this one, I'd love to invite you to subscribe to Science for Sleep. This channel is here to help you wind down with calm stories, gentle facts, and soothing science designed to help you relax and drift off. A butterfly may seem delicate, and in many ways it is, but it is also a finely built little animal, full of surprising abilities and quiet complexity. Some butterflies can taste with their feet. The moment they land, tiny sensors on their legs help them detect what they are standing on. A leaf is not just a leaf to a butterfly. A flower is not just a flower. Each surface may carry information. It may offer food. It may offer the right place to lay eggs. It may tell the butterfly whether to stay or move on. That alone is enough to make the butterfly seem a little less ordinary. Then there are the wings. From far away, butterfly wings can look almost painted, as if someone took a brush and gave them patterns, borders, dots, and bands of color. But those colors are not always made in the way we might expect. Butterfly wings are covered in countless tiny scales, so small that we do not notice them without help. Some of the colors come from pigments, much like color in paint. But some come from the way light interacts with the delicate structure of those scales. In other words, part of a butterfly's beauty is not only color, but light itself, arranged and scattered in ways that make the wings glow, shimmer, or deepen as they move. So even before we understand the butterfly's life, we begin to see that it is built from more than softness alone. It is built from structure, timing, pattern, and change. And then there is the matter of distance. When people think of migration, they often imagine larger animals, birds in the sky, herds crossing open land, whales moving through oceans. A butterfly does not usually come to mind first. It seems too small, too light, too easily carried by the wind. And yet some butterflies travel astonishing distances. They move across regions, across seasons, and across landscapes that seem far too large for such a fragile body. A drifting creature that looks as though it belongs only to one garden may in fact be part of a much larger journey. That can change the way a butterfly feels in the mind. It stops seeming like only a quiet decoration of nature and becomes something else. A traveler, a survivor, a creature with a map written into it. And there is still more hidden in the way butterflies experience the world. Some butterflies can see kinds of light that human eyes cannot see. Among these is ultraviolet light. To us, a flower may look bright, soft, or richly colored. But to a butterfly, that same flower may hold patterns and signals that are completely invisible to us. What seems plain to a person may appear marked and glowing to a butterfly, almost like a secret path painted in light. So when a butterfly moves through a patch of flowers, it may not be wandering at all. It may be reading signs we do not know are there. The more we notice, the more the butterfly becomes a creature of two impressions at once. It is still gentle, still quiet, still lovely in the way it moves, but it is also unusual, highly tuned to the world around it, and shaped by a life far stranger than most of us realize at first glance. Tonight, we're going to slow down and spend time with that strangeness. We're going to look at what a butterfly is, how its body is built, how its wings work, how it lives, how it changes, and how it makes its way through the world. We'll spend time with the butterfly as it begins life in one form and ends it in another. We'll look at flowers, color, flight, seasons, and long journeys. And by the end of tonight, this familiar little animal may feel less like something half seen in passing, and more like one of the quiet wonders of the living world. At first glance, the butterfly seems almost effortless. Just wings, sunlight, and motion. But what sort of animal is it, really, once we move past the beauty and begin looking more closely? When most people picture a butterfly, they do not begin with science. They think of color, sunlight, and soft movement. They imagine something drifting over flowers or crossing a warm summer path. A butterfly often enters the mind as a feeling before it enters as an animal. But if we want to understand butterflies more clearly, it helps to begin with one simple question. What is a butterfly exactly? At the most basic level, a butterfly is an insect. That may sound obvious, but it gives us a strong place to begin. Insects are animals with 6 legs, a hard outer covering, and bodies divided into 3 main parts. They are one of the most successful groups of animals on Earth, living in almost every kind of environment. Beetles, ants, bees, dragonflies, and flies are all insects. Butterflies belong to that same large world, even if they seem softer and gentler than many of their relatives. This is worth noticing because butterflies do not always feel like typical insects in the human imagination. Some insects seem busy, sharp, or armored. Butterflies feel different. People often think of them as peaceful, delicate, and beautiful. Someone who dislikes most insects may still enjoy seeing a butterfly. So there is something calming in remembering that butterflies are not separate from the insect world. They are one quiet expression of it. Butterflies belong to a large group called Lepidoptera. This is the insect order that includes both butterflies and moths. The name refers to scaled wings, which is fitting because tiny scales cover their wings. Those scales are one of the most important features of a butterfly, and later they will help us understand where butterfly color comes from. Butterflies and moths are close relatives, though people often think of them as very different creatures. In a broad and simple way, butterflies are usually active during the day, while many moths are active at night. Nature does not always follow that rule perfectly, but it is a helpful starting point. If you see a bright-winged insect flying in open sunlight from flower to flower, you are probably looking at a butterfly. Butterflies are strongly tied to daylight and warmth. They are not warm-blooded animals, so the world around them matters a great deal. A cool morning may leave a butterfly still and quiet. A warm patch of sunlight may bring it back into motion. This means a butterfly is not only an insect. It is an insect shaped very clearly by light, temperature, and weather. Like other insects, a butterfly has 6 legs. That detail may seem small, but it helps steady the picture in the mind. A butterfly can look like little more than wings in motion, yet it also lands, grips, walks, and senses the surfaces beneath it. Those legs are part of how it interacts with the world. In some species, they even help the butterfly taste what it lands on. Its body is also divided into three main parts. There is the head, which holds the eyes, antennae, and feeding parts. There is the thorax, the strong middle section where the wings and legs attach. Then there is the abdomen, which holds many of the organs needed for digestion, reproduction, and other life processes. This three-part body plan helps place the butterfly clearly within the insect world. But butterflies still feel special inside that group, and part of the reason is their shape. Their wings are large compared to the rest of the body. In many insects, the body stands out first. In butterflies, the wings often dominate the whole image. They give the butterfly its floating look, its broad shape, and much of its grace in motion. The body beneath them can seem almost hidden. That is one reason butterflies feel softer than many other insects. They seem less like machines and more like moving pieces of color. But their bodies are not built by accident. Each part has a job. The antennae help sense the air. The eyes help detect light and movement. The legs help with landing and sensing. The feeding tube helps the butterfly drink. The wings carry it toward flowers, shelter, host plants, and mates. Even when a butterfly looks effortless, its body is doing careful work. There is something else important to remember. A butterfly is not born looking like a butterfly. The winged form we usually picture is only one stage of its life. Before this, it lives as a caterpillar, a form so different that it can feel almost impossible to believe the two are the same animal. So when we ask what a butterfly is, we are really talking about the adult stage of a much longer story. That adult stage is built for a particular life. It is made for movement, feeding, finding mates, and helping begin the next generation. It comes after another stage has already done the heavy work of eating and growing. In that sense, the butterfly is not the beginning of the story. It is the graceful form that appears after a great deal of hidden preparation. And once we see that, the butterfly begins to feel a little different. Not just like a lovely insect passing through sunlight, but like a carefully built animal with structure, purpose, and place in the living world. And that raises a quieter, closer question. If the butterfly is an insect with such a finely shaped body, what exactly do we find when we move in and look at that body up close? Seen from a distance, a butterfly can seem almost unreal. It may look like a pair of wings floating in warm air, turning gently over flowers or drifting across a quiet field. The body beneath those wings is easy to miss. It is small, narrow, and often hidden by color and motion. But when we slow down and look more closely, the butterfly begins to feel less like a passing shape and more like a carefully built little animal. Like other insects, a butterfly's body is divided into three main parts: the head, the thorax, and the abdomen. This simple body plan helps us understand how the butterfly works. Each part has its own role, and together they support a life built around sensing, feeding, moving, and reproducing. The head is the front part of the body. It holds many of the tools the butterfly uses to understand the world around it. Here we find the eyes, the antennae, and the feeding tube. The head may look small compared with the wings, but it is full of important functions. One of the first things we notice on the head is the pair of compound eyes. A compound eye is made of many tiny parts packed closely together. Instead of seeing through one single lens like a human eye, the butterfly gathers information through many small units at once. This helps it notice movement very well. That is useful for an animal that must find flowers, avoid danger, and move through open spaces where it can be easily seen. Butterfly vision is not exactly like our own, but it is well suited to the butterfly's life. The world of a butterfly is full of light, motion, and color, and its eyes help it respond quickly to all three. Also on the head are the antennae, the long feelers that stretch forward from above the face. In many butterflies, the tips of the antennae are slightly thickened, almost like tiny clubs. These antennae help the butterfly sense chemicals in the air. That means they help with smell, though not in quite the same way that a human nose works. They can guide the butterfly toward food, help it notice others of its kind, and provide information about the environment around it. Beneath the head is one of the butterfly's most elegant features, the proboscis. This is the long tube the butterfly uses to drink liquid food, especially nectar. It works like a straw. When not in use, it stays curled tightly beneath the head in a neat spiral. When the butterfly feeds, it uncurls the proboscis and reaches it into a flower or another food source. This is very different from the way a caterpillar eats. A caterpillar chews leaves, but a butterfly drinks. That change tells us something important. The adult butterfly is built for a different kind of life from the one it had before. Behind the head is the thorax, the middle part of the body. If the head is a place of sensing, the thorax is a place of movement. This is where the legs and wings attach. It also contains the muscles that power flight. Though the thorax may look small, it is strong and central to nearly everything the butterfly does. A butterfly has 6 legs, just like other insects. These legs help it land, hold on, walk short distances, and stay steady on leaves or flowers. They also do more than support the body. In some butterflies, the legs contain sensors that help the insect taste what it lands on. So when a butterfly steps onto a surface, it may already be learning whether that place offers food or is suitable for laying eggs. That means landing is not only a physical action. It is also a way of gathering information. The wings also attach to the thorax. Butterflies have 4 wings, not 2. There is a forewing and a hindwing on each side. At first glance, they may look like one large pair, but they are really 2 pairs working together. Their movement gives the butterfly its fluttering, drifting style of flight. The wings themselves are thin and delicate. They are supported by veins and covered with tiny scales. The wings do not flap because of muscles inside the wings themselves. Instead, muscles in the thorax move them from the base. So the light motion we see from the outside depends on hidden strength inside the body. At the rear is the abdomen. This final section contains many of the organs needed for digestion, reproduction, and other life processes. It may not seem as noticeable as the wings or eyes, but it is essential. It reminds us that the butterfly is not only a beautiful surface. It is also a living animal carrying out the work of survival. When we put these parts together, the butterfly becomes clearer in the mind. The head senses, the thorax moves, the abdomen sustains. Each part has its purpose. Each part supports the others. And yet, of all these features, the wings are still the most captivating. They are what most people notice first, and they hold more detail than they seem to from far away. What looks like a smooth sheet of color is actually made of countless tiny scales, layered so carefully that the butterfly becomes even more surprising the closer we look. From far away, butterfly wings can look smooth and almost weightless, like thin pieces of colored paper moving through the air. Their patterns may seem painted on. A band of orange, a patch of blue, a dark border, a pale spot. Everything can appear so neat and flat that it is easy to imagine the wing as one soft surface. But when we move closer, the wing begins to change. A butterfly's wing is not smooth in the way it first appears. It is covered in countless tiny scales, laid across the surface in overlapping rows. These scales are extremely small, far too small to study with the naked eye in any real detail. Yet they are one of the most important parts of the butterfly's body. In fact, they are so important that they helped give the whole group its scientific name. Butterflies and moths belong to the order Lepidoptera, a name that refers to scaled wings. That name makes much more sense once we understand what the scales really are. Each scale is like a tiny flattened structure attached to the wing. They lie close together, often overlapping a little like roof shingles or fish scales. One scale by itself may not look very impressive, but together they create the surface we recognize as a butterfly wing. The colors, patterns, and soft dusty appearance all come from this covering of many small pieces arranged with great precision. This is also why butterfly wings can leave behind a faint powdery look if they are touched. What seems like dust is often scales rubbing loose from the surface. The wing is not meant for rough handling. It is built for flight, display, warmth, and protection, but in a very delicate form. That delicate form can be misleading. A butterfly wing may look fragile, and in some ways it is, but it is also carefully engineered. Beneath the scales, the wing itself is a thin membrane supported by a network of veins. These veins help give the wing structure and shape. They also played important roles during the butterfly's development, especially when the newly emerged adult expanded and hardened its wings for the first time. So the wing is not just a floppy surface. It is a structured part of the body, held together by support lines and covered in tiny scales that do far more than decorate it. One of the most interesting things about these scales is that they are responsible for much of what makes butterfly wings feel magical to us. We notice color first, of course, but the scales also help create texture, softness, and the changing look of the wings as light moves across them. A butterfly resting in shade may look one way, and that same butterfly turning in sunlight may look another. The wing is not like painted cloth. It is a living surface shaped by tiny structures. Scales can also help butterflies in practical ways. They may play a role in warmth, helping the butterfly manage sunlight and temperature. They also contribute to patterning, which can be useful for warning predators, blending into surroundings, or attracting mates. So even though the scales are small, they are deeply tied to how the butterfly survives. There is something calming in this hidden complexity. A butterfly can seem so simple from a distance, as if beauty just appeared there naturally without design. But up close, beauty turns out to be built from layers. It is made from many tiny parts placed in careful order. The broad, graceful wing that drifts through a garden is really a surface of minute structures, each too small to notice alone, but together creating something memorable. It is a gentle reminder that nature often works this way. What looks effortless from afar may be made of countless quiet details. And butterfly wings are a perfect example of that truth. They are light, but not empty, delicate, but not plain. What we see as a single surface is actually a field of overlapping scales, arranged so finely that the whole wing can shimmer with color and pattern. The butterfly does not carry beauty as something spread on top of it. Beauty is built into the wing itself, scale by scale. Once we know that, the next question becomes even more interesting. If butterfly wings are covered in scales, then where do all those bright colors really come from? Are they simply stored in the scales like pigment in paint? Or is light itself part of the story? Once we know that butterfly wings are covered in tiny scales, their colors begin to feel more mysterious. It is easy to assume those colors work the same way color works in paint, fabric, or ink. We see blue, orange, yellow, black, or white, and we imagine that the wing simply contains those colors in a fixed way. Sometimes that is true. Some butterfly colors do come from pigments. Pigments are substances that absorb certain kinds of light and reflect others. If a wing appears yellow, for example, it is because the pigment is reflecting the wavelengths of light we see as yellow while absorbing some others. This is a familiar way of making color. It is the same general reason leaves look green and many flowers look red, pink, or purple. The color is tied to chemical substances in the material itself. But butterflies do not stop there. Some of their most striking colors come not mainly from pigment, but from structure. In those cases, color is created by the physical shape of the tiny scales and the way those structures interact with light. Instead of simply holding color, the scales can bend, scatter, or reflect light in special ways. This is called structural color. That may sound technical at first, but the basic idea is gentle enough. The butterfly is not only colored by what is in the wing, it is also colored by how the wing is built. This is one reason some butterflies seem to shimmer or change slightly as they move. A wing may flash brighter at one angle and softer at another. It may look deep blue in one moment and more muted in the next. That changing effect can happen because the light is meeting the tiny scale structures differently as the butterfly turns. So when we admire a butterfly's color, we may be admiring more than pigment. We may be watching light itself being shaped by the surface of the wing. This makes butterfly color feel a little more alive. It is not always flat or fixed. It can shift with movement, sunlight, and point of view. A butterfly passing through shade and then into open light may seem almost transformed, even when nothing about the wing has changed except the way light meets it. That is part of what makes butterflies so memorable in motion. Their wings do not just carry color, they perform it. Of course, beauty in nature is rarely only for beauty's sake. Color often has a purpose. For some butterflies, bright colors can help attract mates. Clear patterns and strong contrasts may help one butterfly recognize another of its own species. In that way, color becomes part of communication. It helps butterflies find each other in a wide and busy world. Color can also help with survival. Some butterflies are brightly marked to warn predators that they may taste bad or be harmful to eat. In these cases, the wing acts almost like a signal flag. It tells the world, in a very visible way, that this is not an easy or pleasant meal. Other butterflies use color in a very different direction. Instead of standing out, they blend in. Browns, grays, leaf-like shapes, and soft patterns can help them disappear against bark, dry grass, or fallen leaves. To us, a bright butterfly may seem more impressive, but a duller one may be just as beautifully designed, only for concealment rather than display. And then there are butterflies whose wing patterns do something even more interesting. Some carry markings that look a bit like eyes. These eye-like spots may confuse or startle a predator. They may draw attention away from the more vulnerable parts of the body. They may make the butterfly seem larger or stranger than it really is, at least for a moment. And in nature, a moment of hesitation can be enough to survive. So color is never just color. It can attract, it can warn, it can hide, it can trick, it can help a butterfly be noticed, or help it vanish. And because butterfly wings create color in more than one way, the result can be especially rich. Pigment and structure may work together, building wings that are not only useful, but visually extraordinary. A butterfly can become one of the clearest examples in nature of how function and beauty often live side by side. There is something restful in that idea. The colors we notice so quickly in a butterfly are not random decoration. They are part of a larger pattern of life. They come from chemistry, structure, sunlight, and survival, all folded into one soft moving surface. The wing that seems so simple from a distance turns out to hold many quiet layers of meaning. And once color begins to look useful, another question naturally follows. If butterfly wings are filled with bright patterns, warning signals, hidden disguises, and clever markings, then what are those patterns really doing out in the living world? In the butterfly world, color is not only decoration. It can act like a signal, a disguise, or even a kind of quiet deception. What looks beautiful to us may also be deeply useful to the butterfly. A bright wing, a soft brown pattern, or a pair of strange markings may all help decide whether the butterfly is left alone, attacked, or overlooked. Some butterflies use bright colors as a kind of warning. These colors can tell predators that the butterfly may not be a good thing to eat. In some cases, the butterfly may taste bad. In other cases, it may carry chemicals that make it unpleasant or harmful to predators. A bird or lizard that has had a bad experience with one such butterfly may learn to avoid that pattern in the future. This means color can work almost like a message. The butterfly does not need to fight or run as fast as possible if its wings already say, in a very visible way, do not bother. Bright orange, black, yellow, and other strong color combinations often stand out in nature. We notice them quickly, and so do predators. But in this case, being noticed is not always a problem. It can actually help the butterfly. If a predator learns that a certain pattern means an unpleasant meal, then standing out may become a kind of protection. Not all butterflies survive by being seen though. Some survive by almost disappearing. Many butterflies use camouflage, blending into the world around them when they land and become still. A butterfly resting on bark may look like part of the tree. Another may resemble a dry leaf, a faded patch of grass, or a shadow among plants. In these cases, the butterfly's colors do the opposite of warning colors. Instead of sending a bold signal, they help the animal fade into the background. This can be especially important when the butterfly is resting with its wings closed. The bright upper side of the wings may vanish from sight, and the underside may show softer browns, grays, or leaf-like shapes. A butterfly that seemed impossible to miss in flight may suddenly become very hard to notice once it stops moving. That change feels almost magical to us. One moment it is a flash of color in the air. The next moment it is part of the tree, part of the leaf litter, part of the quiet stillness of the landscape. Some butterflies use a different kind of trick. Their wings may carry markings that look a little like eyes. These eye-like spots can make the butterfly seem larger or stranger than it really is. To a predator, that may be enough to cause a brief pause or moment of confusion. And in nature, even a small hesitation can matter. In some cases, these markings may also draw attention away from the most important parts of the butterfly's body. If a predator strikes toward the edge of a wing instead of the head or body, the butterfly may still escape. So even a simple pattern can become part of a survival strategy. Then there is one of the most fascinating tricks of all, mimicry. This happens when one butterfly gains protection by looking like another species that predators already know to avoid. A harmless butterfly may survive because it resembles one that tastes bad or carries toxins. The predator sees the familiar warning pattern and decides it is safer not to attack. So the butterfly does not always need to be dangerous itself. Sometimes it only needs to look as though it might be. This is one of the quiet clevernesses of nature. The butterfly world may seem soft and gentle, but it is also full of signals, tests, and strategies. Color is part of that. Pattern is part of that. Even stillness is part of that. What looks delicate to us may actually be part of a carefully shaped survival system. The butterfly's wings are not only beautiful surfaces, they are tools. They can hide the butterfly, warn others away, confuse a predator, or borrow protection through resemblance. Every pattern carries some possibility. Every color may do more than please the eye. There is something almost peaceful in that hidden usefulness. The butterfly does not survive by force. It survives through timing, design, and small advantages layered quietly into the body. A bright patch here, a leaf-like shape there, a false eye, a familiar warning. All of it working together in a life that depends on being noticed at the right times and overlooked at others. The wings, then, do much more than show color. They also carry the butterfly through the air in a way that feels almost unlike any other creature we watch. Butterflies do not fly with the direct force of birds or the sharp speed of dragonflies. Their movement is softer, lighter, and often harder to predict. They seem to drift, dip, flutter, and turn in ways that feel almost playful. Sometimes they move with purpose. Sometimes they seem to wander. And yet their flight, gentle as it looks, is still a very real way of surviving in the world. Part of what makes butterfly flight feel so different is its rhythm. A butterfly often moves with quick wing beats followed by tiny pauses, glides, or drifting motions. The result is not a straight, steady path. It is a wandering one. The butterfly may rise, dip, turn, and float, changing direction in a way that can seem almost random to us. But what looks random is not always without purpose. That softer, less direct style of flight can help a butterfly in many ways. A predator may have a harder time predicting where the butterfly will go next. A bird chasing a butterfly cannot rely on a perfectly straight path. The butterfly's uneven motion may buy it a little time, and in a life this delicate, a little time can matter a great deal. The butterfly's body shape also helps create this feeling of softness. Its wings are large compared with the rest of its body. That gives the butterfly a broad, open shape in the air. Instead of looking narrow and forceful, it looks light and lifted. The wings catch the air in a way that supports that familiar floating quality. Even when the butterfly is working hard, it rarely appears heavy. This is part of why butterflies are so calming to watch. Their movement feels gentle, even when it is useful. Their flight solves real problems without losing its softness. Different butterflies also fly in different ways. Some seem to bounce lightly from place to place, never staying on one path for long. Others glide more smoothly between wing beats. Some flutter close to the ground, while others rise higher over fields or gardens. A small butterfly may look quick and flickering, while a larger one may seem slower and more measured. These differences come from body size, wing shape, habitat, and way of life. A butterfly moving through open air may fly differently from one staying close to shrubs or flowers. One species may travel longer distances. Another may spend more time feeding in a smaller area. So there is no single butterfly flight pattern. There is a whole range of styles, each shaped by the needs of a particular kind of life. Flight helps butterflies do more than simply move. It helps them search for food, find mates, avoid danger, and travel between places that support their survival. A butterfly may need to cross from one patch of flowers to another, move towards sunlight, escape a threat, or search for the right plant on which to lay eggs. The wings make all of this possible. And yet butterfly flight is still tied closely to weather and warmth. Because butterflies are not warm-blooded, they depend on the conditions around them. A cool butterfly may be slow and still. A warmer butterfly may become active and ready to fly. This means sunlight often plays an important role in the daily life of a butterfly. Warmth helps wake the wings into motion. That gives butterfly flight an even softer feeling. It is not the kind of movement that pushes against the world with constant force. It rises when conditions allow. It rests when conditions do not. It belongs to the rhythm of air, sun, and temperature. There is also something worth noticing in the way a butterfly lands. After all that light motion, it may settle very gently onto a flower, leaf, or stem. The wings may open and close slowly, or fold together above the body. The butterfly becomes still again, as if the drifting shape and the resting shape are two sides of the same life. Motion and quietness live very close together in butterflies. That may be one reason their flight feels so peaceful to us. It is active but never harsh. It is alert but rarely severe. Even when the butterfly is searching, escaping, or crossing space, its movement keeps a softness that seems to belong to summer air itself. So the butterfly's flight is not only beautiful, it is practical, flexible, and deeply tied to survival. The drifting path, the sudden turn, the broad wings, the pause on a flower, all of it belongs to a body shaped for a certain kind of living. It is a flight style that helps the butterfly move through a world of flowers, weather, danger, and distance, while still seeming almost weightless. But butterflies do not begin life in the air at all. In fact, their earliest form is so different that it can feel almost impossible to believe they are the same animal. Before there are wings, there is stillness. The butterfly begins as a tiny egg, often placed with great care on the exact plant its young will need. This first stage is easy to miss. A butterfly egg does not drift through the air or catch the light. It rests quietly on a leaf or stem, so small that many people could pass by it without ever knowing it is there. And yet, this tiny beginning matters enormously. For a butterfly, where the egg is laid can shape everything that follows. A female butterfly does not place her eggs anywhere at random. In many species, she must find the right kind of plant, because once the egg hatches, the young caterpillar will need food almost immediately. That food usually comes from a specific kind of host plant, or at least from a small range of plants the caterpillar is able to eat. This means the butterfly's story is tied to plants long before it is tied to flowers. When we picture butterflies, we often think of them visiting blossoms for nectar. But that comes later, in the adult stage. At the beginning of life, what matters most is not nectar, but leaves. The future butterfly depends on the right leaf being there at the right time, in the right condition, and in the right place. That is why many female butterflies are very selective when laying eggs. They may fly from plant to plant, testing surfaces with their feet, using scent and touch to help judge whether a plant is suitable. To us, two green leaves may look nearly the same. To a butterfly, they may be very different. One may be food for the next generation. The other may be useless. So even before the caterpillar appears, the butterfly is already making careful choices. The egg itself is a quiet structure, but it is not simple. Inside it, early development is already taking place. The shell protects the growing young from the outside world as it waits for the right time to hatch. Some eggs are rounder, some more oval, some ridged or textured in ways that would be easier to notice under magnification. But no matter the shape, the egg holds the same basic promise. A winged life will begin here, though not yet in winged form. This stage can feel almost hidden compared with the rest of the butterfly's life. The egg does not travel. It does not feed. It does not display color in the way the adult butterfly does. It simply waits, holding the first outline of what is to come. There is something restful in that. The butterfly begins not with motion, but with quiet patience. Still, it is also a fragile stage. An egg on a leaf is exposed to weather, dryness, chance, and predators. It depends on its small size and stillness for much of its protection. It belongs to the part of nature that survives not by strength, but by being overlooked. And yet, despite that fragility, the egg is also the result of a long line of success. It exists because another butterfly survived, fed, moved through the world, and found the right place to continue the cycle. So even this still little object on a leaf is part of a much larger story of timing, plant relationships, and survival. it also reminds us that the butterfly's life is deeply connected to place. A butterfly is not only a creature of air and color, it is also a creature of stems, leaves, and very specific plants. Remove those plants, and the butterfly's life becomes much harder to continue. The adult may still visit flowers, but the next generation needs more than beauty. It needs the right beginning. That beginning is often so small that it seems almost impossible to connect it to the adult butterfly we know. A tiny egg on a leaf does not look like the start of something that will one day shimmer in sunlight. It looks like almost nothing at all. And perhaps that is part of what makes the butterfly life cycle so moving. It begins in a form that asks for patience. It asks us to trust that something larger is quietly on its way. From that tiny beginning comes a very different creature. One built not for drifting through the air, but for eating and growing as much as possible. The caterpillar stage is one of the clearest examples in nature of a life built around a single purpose. It eats, grows, sheds, and keeps going. After the quiet stillness of the egg, the caterpillar feels like a sudden shift into action. It is not graceful in the way a butterfly is graceful. It does not drift, shimmer, or float. Instead, it crawls forward, stays close to its food, and turns its energy toward one main task: growth. A caterpillar is the larval stage of the butterfly. This means it is the early feeding form, the stage that comes before the deeper transformation later on. When the egg hatches, the young caterpillar emerges into a world where it must begin eating almost at once. That is why the egg had to be placed so carefully. The caterpillar cannot wander far in search of food. It needs to begin life on or near the plant it is able to eat. And once it begins, it often eats a great deal. Many caterpillars spend much of their time feeding when conditions are right. Leaves become their main food, and their bodies are built for this simple but important work. They chew steadily, rest, move a little, and then feed again. To us, this may seem like a narrow life, but for the caterpillar, it is exactly the right one. Every bite supports a future that is still hidden. That is the strange beauty of the caterpillar. It looks so different from the butterfly that it is easy to forget the two belong to the same life. The caterpillar is long, soft, and close to the ground. It does not have the broad wings, thin legs, or flower-seeking body of the adult. It belongs to the world of leaves and stems, not open air and sunlight. Its body reflects that purpose. A caterpillar is soft and flexible, with a shape made for crawling and feeding. It has true legs near the front and other gripping structures farther back that help it hold onto surfaces as it moves. The movement is slow and practical. Nothing about it suggests the airy, drifting life to come. But the caterpillar is not meant to stay as it is. Its job is to eat and store energy for the dramatic changes still to come. The butterfly stage will depend on what the caterpillar gathers now, so the feeding is not wasteful or aimless. It is preparation. It is the body quietly collecting materials for a life that has not yet appeared. As the caterpillar grows, it faces a simple problem. Its outer covering does not stretch forever. So from time to time, it must shed that outer layer in a process called molting. After each molt, the caterpillar has more room to continue growing. This happens several times in many species. The caterpillar feeds, grows, outgrows its covering, sheds it, and then begins again. There is something almost rhythmic about this stage. Eat, grow, shed, continue. That rhythm gives the caterpillar stage a kind of calm purpose. It is not restless in the way adult life can be restless. It does not need to search for mates or cross distances in flight. It stays close to what it needs and devotes itself to becoming larger and stronger. Still, this life is not without danger. A caterpillar is a soft-bodied creature in a world full of threats. Birds, other insects, weather, and simple bad luck can all end the journey early. Some caterpillars use color to warn predators away. Others blend into leaves or stems. Some remain still when danger is near. Even in this feeding stage, survival depends on more than hunger alone. And yet the main impression of the caterpillar remains the same. It is a growing life, a life in preparation. If the butterfly seems like motion and light, the caterpillar seems like gathering and building. One moves through flowers. The other stays among leaves. One flies, the other crawls. One drinks nectar, the other chews plant tissue. Side by side, they seem almost like separate creatures made for separate worlds. That is what makes the butterfly life cycle feel so unusual. The caterpillar is not a smaller version of the butterfly. It is not a rough draft with wings still missing. It is a completely different form with a different purpose. Nature has split one life into distinct chapters, and the caterpillar chapter is devoted to feeding, growth, and preparation. So when we look at a caterpillar, we are not just seeing an early stage. We are seeing one half of a remarkable contrast. The leaf-eating crawler and the flower-visiting flyer are somehow one continuous life. It is already strange enough that a caterpillar becomes a butterfly. But it becomes even stranger when we compare the two side by side. A caterpillar crawls and chews leaves. A butterfly flies and drinks nectar. They seem like two separate creatures, and yet they are one continuous life. This is one of the strangest and most beautiful things about butterflies. Their story is not a simple path from small to large. It is a deep change from one way of living to another. At first glance, the caterpillar and the butterfly do not seem to match at all. The caterpillar is soft, long, and close to the plant it feeds on. It spends much of its time eating. Its world is made of leaves, stems, and short distances. It moves slowly, and its body is built for growth. The butterfly, by contrast, is shaped for movement through open air. It has wings, a narrow body, and a feeding tube for drinking liquid food. Its world is wider. It moves from flower to flower, from resting place to resting place, and sometimes over very large distances. Even their food is different. A caterpillar usually eats plant leaves, often from a specific host plant. It chews solid food and turns that food into growth. The adult butterfly usually drinks nectar and other liquids. It does not spend its time eating in the same heavy way. The adult stage is less about building a larger body and more about movement, feeding, mating, and helping begin the next generation. This difference is useful because the young and adult stages eat different foods and live in somewhat different parts of the environment. They do not compete with each other in the same direct way. The caterpillar stays with the host plant and focuses on growth. The butterfly moves more widely and focuses on adult life. So one creature is able to live two different lives without each stage getting in the other's way. That division gives the butterfly life cycle a kind of quiet elegance. The early stage gathers energy. The later stage uses it differently. One chapter is about becoming. The next is about going outward. And the bodies reflect that perfectly. The caterpillar's body is made for crawling, gripping, and chewing. It is flexible and food-focused. The butterfly's body is made for sensing, flying, and drinking. It is lighter, more open in shape, and suited to a different kind of activity. This is why metamorphosis feels so remarkable. It is not simply growth. It feels almost like a rebuilding. Something leaf-shaped becomes air-shaped. Something that once stayed on a plant becomes something that can leave it. Something that once fed by chewing becomes something that feeds by sipping. This makes the butterfly life cycle feel deeper than a simple change in size. It is a change in lifestyle, body plan, and relationship to the world. The caterpillar and the butterfly are linked, but they are linked across a transformation so complete that it can seem almost impossible. And yet, this is exactly what happens. Nature has found a way for one animal to live in more than one form. The butterfly does not spend its entire life doing one kind of work. Instead, life is divided into stages, and each stage has its own purpose. The caterpillar grows and stores energy. The butterfly moves, reproduces, and carries the cycle forward. There is something quietly beautiful in that arrangement. It suggests that a life does not have to stay in one shape to remain whole. The creature changes deeply, but it is still itself. The caterpillar is not replaced by the butterfly in the way one animal replaces another. The butterfly is what the caterpillar becomes. That idea has fascinated people for a very long time, and it is easy to understand why. The butterfly seems to show, in a visible and peaceful way, that change can be real without being the end of identity. One life can hold very different chapters. Of course, this does not mean the change is easy or simple. A great deal has to happen between the crawling caterpillar and the flying adult. The body must be reorganized. Structures must be broken down and reshaped. New features must form. Wings must develop. Adult legs and feeding parts must take shape. The whole body must prepare for a completely different kind of existence. That is why the stage between caterpillar and butterfly feels so mysterious. We can understand the caterpillar by watching it eat. We can understand the butterfly by watching it fly. But between those two stages is a quieter phase, one that hides most of the change from view. It is there, in stillness, that the deepest transformation takes place. And perhaps that hidden middle is what makes the whole process feel even more striking. If the change happened in full view, it might feel more ordinary. But instead, the most dramatic part happens inside a quiet shell, out of sight, while the outside remains still. So the butterfly offers us a rare kind of story. It shows us one life living in two very different ways, joined by a transformation so complete that it can feel almost like a miracle of structure and timing. The caterpillar and the butterfly are not just different ages of the same animal. They are different solutions to different needs. One is made for growth. The other is made for movement. One gathers, the other travels. One stays low among leaves, the other rises into flowers and light. That rebuilding happens inside one of the quietest structures in nature, hanging still while almost everything changes out of sight. The chrysalis may look calm and motionless from the outside, but inside, it holds one of the most remarkable changes in the natural world. Hanging quietly from a stem, a leaf, or some other small surface, it can seem almost empty of action. Nothing about it suggests movement. Nothing about it hints at flight. It simply rests there, still and closed, as though the story has paused for a while. But the story has not paused at all. The chrysalis is the pupal stage of the butterfly. It comes after the caterpillar has finished its main period of feeding and growth. At this point, the caterpillar is no longer trying to become larger. Instead, it is preparing for something more dramatic. It is about to change its entire body for a different kind of life. That is what makes the chrysalis so fascinating. It is not a sleeping stage, and it is not just a waiting stage. It is a stage of deep transformation. From the outside, the chrysalis can look simple. Its shape may be smooth or angular, depending on the species. Its color may blend into its surroundings, helping protect it from notice. Some are green, some brown, some shaped in ways that make them look like part of a leaf or twig. This helps the chrysalis remain hidden during a time when it cannot escape danger, by crawling or flying away. Stillness here is part of survival. Inside that still shell, the body is changing in ways that are far more complex than they appear from the outside. The caterpillar body is being reorganized. Tissues that were useful during the larval stage are broken down, while new adult structures develop. Wings begin to take shape. Adult legs form. Feeding structures change. The body is being rebuilt for a completely different way of living. The exact details of this process are complex, but the basic truth is simple enough to hold in the mind. The animal that once crawled and chewed leaves is being transformed into one that will fly and drink nectar. The body is not merely growing larger, it is becoming different. That is why the butterfly life cycle feels so much deeper than ordinary growth. A kitten becomes a cat, and a young bird becomes an adult bird, but both remain recognizable versions of the same form. A caterpillar and a butterfly are different in a much more dramatic way. The chrysalis is where that difference is built. There is something almost hard to believe about it. The long, soft caterpillar, built for eating and crawling, gives way to a winged adult shaped for movement through air and flowers. And all of that happens inside a hanging structure that appears, from the outside, to be doing almost nothing at all. This hiddenness gives the chrysalis a special kind of power in the imagination. It reminds us that some of the most important changes in nature happen quietly. No display, no noise, no visible effort. Only time, stillness, and careful internal work. That does not mean the chrysalis is inactive. Far from it. It is full of biological activity. Cells are dividing. Structures are forming. The body is being arranged in new ways. What seems like silence is actually a period of intense organization. The butterfly is being prepared piece by piece, and yet the outer impression remains calm. Perhaps that is why the chrysalis feels so fitting in the butterfly story. Every stage has had its own mood so far. The egg was still and hidden. The caterpillar was active and hungry. Now the chrysalis returns to stillness, but a stillness full of change rather than waiting alone. It feels like the quiet center of the whole life cycle, the point where one kind of existence ends and another begins. It is also one of the most vulnerable stages. The chrysalis cannot move from danger. It cannot search for food or escape harsh conditions. Its safety depends on where it was formed, how well it blends in, and whether it can remain unnoticed. So even here, in the middle of transformation, survival is never guaranteed. That makes the butterfly's later appearance feel even more meaningful. When an adult finally emerges, it is not simply the next step in a neat sequence. It is the result of a risky and hidden process that had to succeed in silence. The chrysalis asks for patience from the world around it. It asks for time. It asks to be left alone long enough for the work inside to finish. And when we think of it that way, it becomes one of the most peaceful stages in the entire butterfly life cycle. Not because nothing is happening, but because so much is happening beneath an appearance of perfect calm. Then, after all that hidden work, the butterfly must finally enter the open world. But even that first moment is not as immediate as it may seem. When a butterfly first emerges from the chrysalis, it is not yet ready to fly. Its wings are soft, folded, and waiting. This can be surprising to imagine, because we often think of the butterfly as arriving fully formed, ready at once to lift into the air. But the first moments of adult life are quieter than that. The butterfly begins in a fragile state. As it comes out of the chrysalis, its wings are small, wrinkled, and crumpled against the body. They do not yet have the broad, smooth shape we associate with a butterfly in flight. The insect has reached its adult form, but that form is not yet complete in a practical sense. It has arrived, but it is still preparing. This stage is one of the gentlest in the whole butterfly life cycle. There is no rush in the way it unfolds. The butterfly must pause. It must remain still long enough for the final steps to happen. One of the most important of those steps is the expansion of the wings. The butterfly pumps fluid into the wing veins, helping the wings unfold and stretch outward. Slowly, the wings begin to take on their proper size and shape. What was crumpled begins to open. What looked too small begins to widen into the familiar form we know. There is something deeply calming in this process. The butterfly does not leap straight from hidden transformation into immediate motion. Instead, it enters the world with one more period of stillness, one more quiet preparation before flight. Once the wings have expanded, they are still not ready to use. They must dry and harden. For a time, the butterfly simply waits. It may cling to the empty chrysalis or to a nearby surface, holding itself in place while the wings settle into their final form. Sunlight and air can help with this process, but time is the key part. The wings need to become firm enough to support flight. Only after that waiting can the butterfly make its first proper journey into the air. Until then, the butterfly is vulnerable. It cannot yet escape well. It cannot move through the world with the grace and freedom we later associate with it. This first stage of adult life is full of risk. A gust of weather, a predator, or damage to the wings could end the story very early. The butterfly has completed one of nature's most remarkable transformations. but it still depends on a final stretch of safety and patience before that transformation can be fully expressed. That fragility gives this moment special meaning. It reminds us that becoming is not always instant. Even after the great hidden work of the chrysalis is finished, there is still a short and necessary time when the new life must gather itself. And then, at last, flight becomes possible. The butterfly lifts into a world very different from the one it knew as a caterpillar. No longer tied to a leaf, it now moves through open air, sunlight, and flowers. Its body is no longer shaped for chewing and growing, but for traveling, sensing, feeding, and seeking. The quiet creature that once crawled among stems now enters a wider world. That shift can feel almost magical, but it also makes practical sense. The butterfly has become an adult, and the adult stage depends on movement. It must find food. It must avoid danger. It may need to locate a mate, search for egg-laying sites, or move between feeding areas. The wings now carry all of that possibility. So this first emergence is more than a physical act. It is a crossing point between hidden change and visible life. The butterfly does not burst into the world all at once. It unfolds into it. First the chrysalis opens. Then the body appears. Then the wings expand. Then they dry. Then, only then, does the butterfly rise fully into its new form. It is one of the most peaceful beginnings in nature, quiet and delicate, yet full of significance. Once the wings are ready, the butterfly enters a world of flowers, sunlight, scent, and movement. That raises another gentle question. How does a butterfly find what it needs? A butterfly does not bite into food the way a caterpillar does. Its adult feeding style is lighter, more selective, and deeply tied to the flowering world. This is one of the clearest signs that the butterfly is living a very different life from the one it lived before. The caterpillar chewed leaves and stayed close to its food. The butterfly moves through open air and drinks from scattered sources. The main tool for this is the proboscis. The proboscis is a long feeding tube that works much like a straw. When the butterfly is not using it, it stays curled beneath the head in a neat spiral. When the butterfly lands to feed, the proboscis uncurls and extends into a flower or another source of liquid food. It is a simple motion, but also an elegant one. The butterfly does not tear or chew. It reaches, sips, and then moves on. For many butterflies, the main food is nectar. Nectar is a sweet liquid produced by flowers, and it gives the butterfly energy for flight and daily activity. Because butterflies spend so much of their adult lives moving, they need a steady source of fuel. Nectar helps provide that. A butterfly visiting flowers may look as though it is drifting from bloom to bloom without much purpose, but it is often feeding with care and regularity. Different butterflies may feed from different flowers. Some are better suited to certain flower shapes or feeding spots than others. A long proboscis may help one species reach deeper into a flower, while another may prefer more open blossoms. So even in feeding, the butterfly's body and the flower's form are closely linked. But nectar is not the only thing butterflies take in. Some butterflies feed from tree sap, especially when sap is exposed on damaged bark. Others may feed from rotting fruit, where sugars and moisture are still available. Some gather on damp ground, mud, or puddles to take in minerals and salts dissolved in the moisture. This behavior may seem unusual at first, especially if we are used to picturing butterflies only on flowers, but it is part of how they meet their needs. So the butterfly's feeding world is wider than the flower alone, even though flowers remain central to many species. One of the most surprising parts of butterfly feeding is that butterflies can taste with their feet. Tiny sensory structures on their legs help them test the surfaces they land on. This means that when a butterfly touches a leaf, flower, or other surface, it may already be gathering chemical information about that place. To us, landing and tasting feel like separate actions. For a butterfly, they can happen together. This is useful in more than one way. It helps the butterfly decide whether a surface offers something worth feeding on. It can also help some female butterflies judge whether a plant is suitable for laying eggs. If the plant is right for a future caterpillar, that matters greatly. So tasting with the feet links feeding, movement, and reproduction in a very quiet and clever way. There is something gentle in the way butterflies feed. Their adult life is not built around heavy eating. It is built around frequent, careful gathering. A sip here, a pause there, then another short flight onward. The pattern fits the butterfly's whole way of being. Light body, light landing, light feeding. And yet, it is still serious work. Without food, the butterfly cannot keep moving through the world. It cannot search for mates, avoid danger, or continue the cycle of life. What looks graceful is also necessary. The calm visit to a flower is part of survival. Feeding also brings butterflies again and again into contact with the plant world. Their adult life depends on liquid food, and much of that food comes from plants. This creates a close relationship between butterflies and flowering places like meadows, gardens, forest edges, and sunny clearings. A butterfly is never far, in one way or another, from the plants that support it. That relationship becomes even more interesting when we remember that butterflies are not only taking from flowers. As they move from bloom to bloom, they may also help the plants themselves. Feeding leads butterflies again and again toward flowers. But the relationship between butterflies and plants is not one-sided. A flower may look still, and a butterfly may look wandering, but the meeting between them is part of a long and meaningful relationship. When we picture a butterfly, we often picture it near a flower, and that is not by accident. Flowers offer food, and butterflies bring movement from bloom to bloom. What looks like a quiet moment in a garden is often part of a larger exchange. For the butterfly, flowers are one of the main sources of energy. Many butterflies visit flowers to drink nectar, the sweet liquid that helps fuel their flight and daily activity. Because butterflies spend so much of their adult lives moving, even gentle feeding matters. A flower is not just something beautiful to land on. It is a place of nourishment. But flowers are not all the same to a butterfly. Different butterflies are drawn to different flower colors, shapes, and nectar sources. Some may prefer open flowers where nectar is easy to reach. Others may be better suited to flowers with deeper centers. Color can also matter. Certain blossoms may stand out more clearly to butterflies, especially when combined with the ways butterflies sense light and pattern. So a flowering patch is not just one feeding place. It is a landscape of choices. That helps explain why butterflies often seem selective as they move through a garden or meadow. They may pass one flower and settle on another. They may return to some blooms more often than others. What looks gentle and wandering can also be careful and purposeful. As butterflies move from flower to flower, they may also help transfer pollen. Pollen is the fine material plants use in reproduction, and when a butterfly brushes against one flower and then another, some of that pollen may be carried along. Butterflies are not the only animals that do this, and they are not always the most efficient pollinators, but they still play a role in helping certain plants reproduce. So the butterfly does not only receive from the flower, it can also give something back. That gives their relationship a quiet balance. The butterfly gains energy. The plant may gain help in spreading pollen. Neither one is simply serving the other. Instead, they meet through shared need. This is one reason places rich in plant life can feel so full of butterfly activity. Sunny meadows, gardens, open edges of woodland, and wild patches of flowering plants can all become important feeding spaces. Butterflies often do well where there is warmth, light, and a good variety of flowers. A patch of ground that seems simple to us may be, for a butterfly, a map of food sources and resting places. And flowers are only part of the plant story. Plants support butterflies in more than one stage of life. As adults, butterflies may depend on flowers for nectar. But earlier in life, they depend on certain plants as places to lay eggs and as food for caterpillars. This means a healthy butterfly habitat often needs more than bright blooms. It also needs the right leaves, stems, and host plants for the next generation. That makes the relationship between butterflies and plants much deeper than a single feeding visit. Plants help support the butterfly across its life cycle. They are part of the beginning, the middle, and the continuation of butterfly life. There is something peaceful in that closeness. The butterfly, so often imagined as a creature of air and motion, is deeply tied to rooted things. It depends on plants that stay in one place. The drifting insect and the still flower are not opposites after all. They belong to the same living pattern. And perhaps that is why a butterfly among flowers feels so natural to us. The scene is calm, but it is not empty. It is full of exchange, timing, and quiet dependence. A flower offers sweetness. A butterfly arrives with wings, feet, and a coiled feeding tube. Each is shaped in part by the existence of the other. So the next time a butterfly moves through a garden, it may be worth seeing that moment as more than a pretty picture. It is part of a long connection between insect and plant, movement and stillness, feeding and growth. To find flowers, mates, and safe places, butterflies need to sense their world well. And their world may not look much like ours at all. When we watch a butterfly move through a garden, we see color, shape, and sunlight. We notice flowers opening in the light, leaves shifting in a breeze, and a small winged animal drifting from one bloom to the next. It can all seem very familiar, but the butterfly may be experiencing that same place in a very different way. Its world is built from signals we do not fully share. A butterfly's eyes are very different from human eyes. Like many insects, butterflies have compound eyes, which means each eye is made of many tiny units packed together. This gives them a way of gathering visual information that is especially useful for noticing movement and changes in light. A butterfly may not see the world exactly as we do, but it is well equipped for the kind of life it lives. It needs to notice flowers, avoid danger, find others of its kind, and move through open spaces where conditions can change quickly. That alone gives the butterfly a different experience of the world from ours. But there is something even more striking. Some butterflies can see ultraviolet light, which human eyes cannot naturally detect. Ultraviolet is part of the light spectrum, but it lies beyond the range of ordinary human vision. To us, a flower may appear yellow, purple, white, or blue. To a butterfly, that same flower may carry additional patterns in ultraviolet light, patterns that are completely invisible to us. This means a flower may not look plain at all to a butterfly, even if it looks simple to us. It may contain lines, patches, or markings that help guide the butterfly toward nectar. In a sense, the flower may be giving directions in a language of light. That idea can change the way a garden feels in the mind. What seems to us like a peaceful arrangement of color may, to a butterfly, be full of hidden signs and glowing pathways. A place that appears calm and ordinary to human eyes may be much richer and more detailed to the butterfly moving through it. Butterflies also use their antennae to gather information. These are not only decorative feelers. They help sense chemicals in the air, which means they are important for detecting scent and other signals. A butterfly may be guided not just by what it sees, but also by what it smells. Flowers, mates, and even suitable plants for laying eggs may all leave chemical traces that the butterfly can detect. So the butterfly's world is not made from sight alone. It is also shaped by touch. When a butterfly lands, its feet may help it test the surface beneath it. This can help it decide whether a flower offers food or whether a plant is suitable for future eggs. For the butterfly, landing is not simply stopping. It is also gathering information. When we put all of this together, the butterfly begins to seem less like a creature drifting at random and more like a creature constantly reading its surroundings. It is sensing light, movement, scent, and surface all at once. What looks soft and wandering from the outside may actually be guided by a steady flow of hidden information. There is something calming in that thought. The butterfly does not need to understand the world in the way we do. It does not need maps, language, or plans. And yet, it still moves through life by reading patterns all around it. The flower, the breeze, the sunlight, the scent in the air, the taste of a leaf. All of these become part of a quiet system of guidance. This may also help explain why butterflies seem so well matched to their surroundings. They are not simply passing through a meadow or garden. They are tuned to it. Their bodies are shaped to notice the kinds of signals that matter most for survival. And those signals can guide them farther than we might expect. Because for some butterflies, sensing the world well is not only about finding the next flower or safe resting place. It is also about moving across much larger distances. A small body, delicate wings, and a gentle flight style do not prevent certain butterflies from making surprisingly long journeys. With all these senses, butterflies can navigate surprisingly well. And for some species, that navigation leads not just across a meadow, but across astonishing distances. It is easy to think of butterflies as local creatures, drifting only from flower to flower. We imagine them staying close to gardens, meadows, and sunny patches of land, living out their whole lives within a small familiar space. And for many butterflies, that image is not entirely wrong. But some species live on a much larger map. Some butterflies are travelers. They move across long distances as seasons change, crossing regions that seem far too large for such delicate bodies. This can feel surprising at first. A butterfly looks so light, so easily moved by the wind, that it hardly seems built for great journeys. And yet migration is part of the life of certain butterflies, just as it is for some birds, fish, and mammals. These journeys do not happen for no reason. Butterflies may migrate because of changing temperatures, shifting food supplies, breeding needs, or the need to survive through different seasons. In one place, conditions may become too cold. In another, the plants needed for the next stage of life may only be available at certain times. Migration helps butterflies stay connected to the conditions they need. So even though a butterfly's flight feels soft and wandering, it can still be part of a larger pattern. That is one of the quiet wonders of butterfly life. What looks like a gentle flutter through a field may belong to a much longer story, one shaped by weather, season, and inherited behavior. The butterfly does not need to understand the journey in human terms. It does not need to know a map, but its life can still be guided by patterns that carry it across long distances. Butterflies rely on a mix of environmental cues and built-in behavior to make these movements possible. Changes in light, temperature, and season can all matter. The butterfly responds to the world around it, and those responses help guide its timing. In that way, migration is not one single act of strength. It is a series of small responses to the larger rhythm of the year. There is something beautiful in that. The butterfly does not overpower the world. It moves with it. Of course, migration in a butterfly does not always mean one individual travels an impossible distance all by itself, from beginning to end. In some species, the larger journey may unfold across more than one generation. One group moves part of the way, lays eggs, and the next generation continues the pattern. So the migration belongs not only to one butterfly, but to the life cycle of the species as a whole. That makes butterfly migration feel different from the migrations people usually picture. It is not always one creature making one heroic trip. Sometimes it is a chain of small lives linked together, each carrying part of the journey forward. Even so, the achievement remains extraordinary. A creature so light that it can rest on a flower petal can still be part of a movement spread across vast stretches of land. A body that seems built only for softness can also hold endurance, timing, and direction. This reminds us that size can be misleading in nature. Small animals are not always living small lives. The scale of the body and the scale of the journey do not always match. A butterfly may be tiny in our hand, but its story may reach across forests, fields, mountains, or entire regions. Migration also changes the way we think about butterfly flight. It is no longer only the movement of a single afternoon in a single garden. It becomes part of a much larger rhythm. The butterfly is still feeding, resting, and avoiding danger as it goes. But it is also part of a seasonal flow through the landscape. That gives butterfly life a wider feeling. These are not only creatures of the moment. they are also creatures of timing, return, and movement across space. Their journeys tie them to the turning year in a deeper way than we might first imagine. And perhaps that is why migration in butterflies feels so moving. It joins two impressions that seem hard to hold together: fragility and endurance, lightness and distance, soft wings and long travel. The contrast itself is part of the wonder. Their journeys remind us that small animals can live on very large maps. And no butterfly migration is better known than that of the monarch, whose story feels almost too large for such a light and fragile body. Among butterflies, the monarch has become famous for turning a gentle flutter into one of the great travel stories of the insect world. When people think of migrating butterflies, it is often the monarch they imagine first, and it is easy to understand why. The monarch takes something that seems small, soft, and fragile, and places it inside a journey so large that it can feel almost unbelievable. At first glance, the monarch does not look like a great traveler. It has the same quiet delicacy we associate with many butterflies. Its wings are light, its body is narrow, its flight can look easy and wandering. But the life of the monarch is tied to a much bigger pattern, one shaped by distance, season, and return. In North America, monarchs are known for long seasonal migrations. As the year changes, they move toward overwintering areas where large numbers gather together. This is one of the most striking parts of the monarch story. The migration is not only about one butterfly moving from one flower patch to another. It is about huge movements across regions, guided by the needs of survival and the turning of the seasons. That alone would be remarkable enough. But the monarch's journey becomes even more fascinating when we realize that the full yearly cycle is often not completed by a single butterfly acting alone. Instead, the migration can unfold across multiple generations. One generation may travel part of the way, reproduce, and then die. The next generation continues the story. In this way, the migration belongs not only to one individual, but to the species across time. The route is carried forward in stages, with different butterflies taking part in different parts of the larger movement. There is something deeply moving in that. The journey is larger than one life, yet each life contributes to it. A single monarch may not complete the entire cycle from beginning to end, but it still plays its part in the pattern. The migration becomes a chain of lives linked together by timing, instinct, and place. This also helps explain why monarchs feel so symbolic to many people. Their story is not just about distance. It is about continuity. It is about a path that continues across generations, even though no single butterfly lasts very long. Another important part of the monarch's life is milkweed. Milkweed is not just one more plant in the landscape for monarchs. It is central to their life cycle, especially for egg-laying and caterpillar feeding. Female monarchs lay their eggs on milkweed, and once those eggs hatch, the caterpillars depend on that plant as food. This means the monarch's migration and the monarch's breeding cycle are tied closely to the availability of milkweed. Without the right plants in the right places, the life cycle becomes much harder to continue. So the story of the monarch is not only about wings and distance, it is also about leaves, stems, and habitat. That gives the migration a grounded side. Even as the monarch crosses long distances, it remains tied to very specific needs. It must move through a world where the right places still exist. The monarch also shows us something important about appearances in nature. It looks delicate, but it is capable of endurance. It looks soft, but it belongs to one of the most famous migration stories among insects. It seems like a creature of gardens and summer fields, yet its life reaches across regions and seasons. This contrast is part of what makes the monarch so memorable. It holds together two qualities that seem opposite at first: fragility and strength, lightness and persistence, beauty and survival. And perhaps that is why the monarch has become more than just another butterfly in the human imagination. It has become a reminder that even small creatures can live on a grand scale. A gentle-looking animal can still be part of an immense seasonal movement, guided by patterns older and larger than itself. The monarch does not overpower distance. It answers it. It moves when the season asks it to move. It depends on timing, habitat, and inherited behavior. In that sense, its migration feels less like conquest and more like participation in the rhythm of the natural world. That rhythm does not belong only to monarchs, of course. Even butterflies that stay closer to home still live by the turning of the year. Migration is one way. Butterflies move through time and season. But even species that stay closer to home still live by the turning of the year. A butterfly's life is always tied to timing. Warmth, light, rain, and plant growth all shape when it feeds, grows, transforms, or disappears from view. Even when a butterfly seems to be drifting freely through the world, its life is closely linked to the turning of the year. It lives not only in space but in season. Many butterflies are most active during the warmer parts of the year. Spring and summer often bring the flowers, leaves, and sunlight they need. Adult butterflies can feed more easily when blossoms are open and weather conditions support flight. Caterpillars can grow when host plants are fresh and available. In this way, the visible butterfly season is usually also the season of plant abundance. This helps explain why butterflies can feel so strongly connected to warm days. They belong to that time of year when meadows bloom, gardens fill out, and sunlight lingers. A butterfly in motion often feels like part of summer itself. But butterflies are not all living by the exact same schedule. Different species pass through the colder part of the year in different ways. Some spend the winter as eggs, waiting for warmth before the next stage begins. Others survive the season as caterpillars, remaining hidden until conditions improve. Some remain in the chrysalis stage, holding their transformation in stillness until the right time. And some species pass the winter as adults, sheltering and waiting for warmth to return. This variety reminds us that there is no single butterfly calendar. Each species is shaped by its own timing, its own habitat, and its own way of surviving through the year. Seasonal timing affects nearly everything in butterfly life. It shapes when eggs hatch, when caterpillars feed, when chrysalises form, when adults emerge, and when migration takes place. If plants appear too early or too late, if weather changes suddenly, or if a season turns harsh, that timing can be disrupted. The butterfly's life depends on many parts of the natural world, lining up well enough for each stage to succeed. So a butterfly is never only responding to its own body. it is also responding to the larger clock of the environment. This is one reason a place may seem empty of butterflies in one season and full of them in another. A garden that feels still in early spring may come alive later. A field that seems full of motion in summer may grow quiet again as the year turns. The butterflies have not simply appeared and vanished without reason. Their presence follows patterns of temperature, plant growth, light, and survival. That gives butterfly life a repeating quality. Year after year, the cycle returns. Eggs are laid, caterpillars feed, chrysalises hold their hidden work. Adults emerge and move through flowers and air. Then the season shifts and the pattern changes again. There is something deeply calming in that repetition. The butterfly, which seems so brief in one moment, belongs to a cycle much older and steadier than any one individual life. Even though a single butterfly may not live long, the life pattern of butterflies returns again and again with the seasons. Still, those returns are not always equal. Some years bring more butterflies. Some bring fewer. Rainfall, temperature, habitat, food plants, and other conditions can all affect how many butterflies appear in a place. A meadow bright with butterflies one summer may be quieter the next. The cycle continues, but the numbers rise and fall. That matters because butterflies are not only beautiful signs of warm weather, their presence tells us something about the world around them. They are tied to plants, climate, and habitat in ways that make them sensitive to change. When butterflies thrive, it often means certain parts of the environment are working well enough to support them. So the seasons do more than mark butterfly life. They shape it at every stage. The butterfly is a creature of timing, living in step with warmth, light, leaves, flowers, and the return of suitable days. To watch butterflies through the year is to watch one small life form responding again and again to the larger rhythm of the earth. And those numbers matter, because butterflies are not only beautiful on their own, they are part of much larger living systems around them. No butterfly lives alone in nature. Each one belongs to a wider system of plants, predators, weather, and other creatures. When we see a butterfly drifting through a garden or crossing a field, it can seem like a small and separate life, almost self-contained in its beauty. But the butterfly is always connected to many other lives around it. It is part of a web. Butterflies are part of food webs, which means they take part in the movement of energy through living systems. At different stages of life, they may be eaten by many kinds of animals. Birds, spiders, lizards, frogs, and other insects may all feed on butterflies or on their earlier forms. The butterfly is not outside the struggle of nature simply because it looks gentle to us. In fact, the caterpillar stage is especially important as food for other species. A caterpillar is soft-bodied, full of stored energy, and often easier to catch than a flying adult. Many animals depend on caterpillars as a food source, especially during seasons when young birds and other growing creatures need rich nourishment. So even before a butterfly takes flight, it may already be playing an important role in supporting other lives. This helps us see the butterfly in a fuller way. It is not only an individual animal moving through its own story, it is also part of many other stories at the same time. Butterflies also contribute to plant life. As adults, they visit flowers for nectar, and in doing so, They may help move pollen from one flower to another. They are not the only pollinators, and they are not always the most efficient, but they still take part in this quiet exchange. The butterfly receives food, and the plant may gain help with reproduction. In that way, butterflies are tied into the life of flowering plants not only as visitors, but also as participants. Plants, of course, support butterflies in return. They provide nectar for adults, host plants for eggs, and leaves for caterpillars. Without the right plants, butterflies cannot continue their cycle. So the relationship between butterflies and plants runs in both directions. One helps feed the other, and one helps shape the future of the other. Because of these close ties, the presence or absence of butterflies can sometimes tell us something about the health of a place. A meadow with many flowers, host plants, and shelter may support more butterfly life than a place where those things are missing. If butterfly numbers fall in an area, it can sometimes reflect changes in habitat, plant communities, or other environmental conditions. This does not mean butterflies are perfect measures of the natural world, but they can still act as signs. They are sensitive to what is growing, what is missing, and how well the local system is functioning. That sensitivity makes butterflies feel even more woven into the world around them. They are not only creatures passing through a habitat, they are shaped by it, supported by it, and sometimes reveal something about it. There is a peaceful truth in that. A butterfly may seem light and separate as it moves through the air, but it is actually held within a network of relationships. It depends on leaves and flowers. It feeds other lives. It responds to weather. It rises or declines with the condition of the place around it. Its beauty is real, but that beauty is not isolated. It belongs to a larger pattern. And perhaps that is part of why butterflies feel so meaningful to us. They let us see the web of life in a softer form. Through them, we notice that a flower, a bird, a patch of milkweed, a season of rain, and a drifting insect are not unrelated things. They are linked. A butterfly is both an individual life and a small thread in a much larger pattern. That larger pattern can be delicate. And for butterflies, survival is never guaranteed, no matter how peaceful they may look to us. Butterflies often seem effortless in motion, but their lives are filled with risk. Much of what they do depends on timing, weather, food, and simple chance. When we see a butterfly moving lightly through the air, it can be easy to imagine that such a peaceful life must also be an easy one. But the truth is quieter and harder than that. At every stage, the butterfly faces danger. The egg, resting on a leaf or stem, is small and still. That stillness may help it avoid notice, but it also leaves it exposed. A shift in weather, a hungry predator, too much dryness, or simple bad luck can end the life before it has even truly begun. The caterpillar, for all its focus on feeding and growth, is also vulnerable. It is soft-bodied and easy to spot in some settings. Birds, insects, and other animals may feed on it. Even a well-hidden caterpillar depends on staying unnoticed long enough to keep growing. Its life is full of eating, but also full of risk. The chrysalis may seem safer because it is still and often well hidden, but it too depends on chance and protection. It cannot crawl away, it cannot fly, It cannot defend itself in the ways larger animals might. It relies on where it was formed, how well it blends into its surroundings, and whether it can remain undisturbed while transformation takes place inside. Then there is the adult butterfly, the stage we usually notice most. Even here, among flowers and sunlight, danger remains close. A butterfly in flight may be caught by a bird or spider. Strong wind or sudden rain can make movement difficult. A cold day may leave it too still to escape well. What looks graceful is often balanced on a narrow edge between survival and loss. Weather matters a great deal in butterfly life. Storms can damage wings or wash away fragile early stages. Cold temperatures can slow movement, delay development, or reduce survival. Drought can limit the growth of flowers and host plants, leaving butterflies with less food and fewer safe places to continue their cycle. Even though butterflies are small, or perhaps because they are small, they depend strongly on the conditions around them. Habitat matters too. If flowers disappear, adult butterflies may struggle to feed. If host plants are lost, females may have nowhere suitable to lay eggs, and caterpillars may have nothing to eat after hatching. A place may still look green to us and yet be missing the exact plants a butterfly needs. This is one reason the loss of habitat can affect butterflies so deeply. Their lives depend not just on general nature, but on the right parts of nature being present together. Pesticides can also reduce butterfly numbers in some places. A substance meant to control insects in general may affect butterflies directly, or it may reduce the plants and smaller living relationships that support them. This adds another layer of difficulty to a life already shaped by weather, predators, and timing. Because so few individuals survive every stage, many butterflies produce large numbers of eggs. This is one of nature's quiet answers to a hard truth. Not every egg will hatch. Not every caterpillar will reach the chrysalis. Not every chrysalis will produce a healthy adult. Not every adult will live long enough to reproduce. The cycle continues not because each individual is safe, but because enough survive to carry the story forward. That can sound sad at first, but it is also part of the beauty of butterflies. Their lives are not beautiful because they are protected from hardship. They are beautiful because they continue through it. Every butterfly we see has already passed through risk. It has come from a chain of vulnerable stages and brief chances that held together long enough for wings to open in the light. So the calm beauty we notice is only one side of a butterfly's life. The other side is endurance. Not endurance in the loud or heroic sense, but in a quieter form. A kind of persistence built into eggs, caterpillars, chrysalises, and adults. Each stage continuing as best it can within a world full of pressure. Perhaps that is one reason butterflies have touched people so deeply for so long. We do not only see beauty in them, we also sense something brief and precious. Across places and cultures, butterflies have often been linked with beauty, change, memory, and the passage from one state of life into another. This feels natural somehow. Even before we know much about butterflies scientifically, many of us sense that they carry a meaning beyond themselves. They are not only insects in the human imagination. They are also symbols, feelings, and reminders. Part of this comes from metamorphosis. A butterfly begins as an egg, becomes a caterpillar, enters the stillness of the chrysalis, and emerges in a form so different that it can feel almost unbelievable. People have long looked at this process and seen more than biology. They have seen transformation. They have seen the idea that one life can pass through deep change and still remain connected to itself. That is a powerful image, and it helps explain why butterflies so often appear in stories, art, and reflection. They seem to stand for change that is quiet rather than violent, beautiful rather than harsh. Their transformation is real and dramatic, yet it unfolds through patience, stillness, and time. Their movement adds to that feeling. A butterfly does not rush through the world in the way many other animals do. It drifts, pauses, turns, and settles. Its flight feels light and almost thoughtful. Combined with the short adult life of many species, this can make a butterfly seem especially delicate and meaningful. It appears, moves briefly through the air, and is gone again. That brevity gives it emotional weight. People often respond strongly to things that are both beautiful and brief. Butterflies also live close to places humans tend to love: gardens, fields, forest edges, and warm outdoor spaces. Many people first notice butterflies in childhood, long before they know much about insect anatomy or life cycles. A butterfly in a yard or park may become part of a memory of spring, summer, family, or quiet time outside. Because of that, butterflies often feel familiar in a warm and personal way. They are also common in art, clothing, decoration, and stories. Their wing patterns make them easy to admire visually, and their life cycle gives them meaning that goes beyond appearance alone. A butterfly can represent beauty, renewal, freedom, hope, or the passing nature of life, depending on the person and the setting. It is rare for an animal so small to carry so much symbolic weight. That may be because butterflies invite feeling so easily. Humans do not only study them, we also project emotion onto them. We see a butterfly and think of gentleness. We think of change. We think of something precious, something light, something that should not be handled too roughly. Even if the butterfly is simply living its own life, we often experience it through a layer of human feeling. There is nothing wrong with that. In some ways, it is part of how we relate to the natural world. A butterfly becomes one of the places where science and emotion meet. We can understand its body, its senses, its feeding, its migration, and its survival, while still feeling that it means something more to us. And perhaps it really does. Not because the butterfly was made for our symbolism, but because it helps us notice truths we already feel. Change is real. Beauty can be brief. Small lives can hold great wonder. Fragility and strength can exist together. That is why butterflies so often remain in memory. A person may forget many insects they saw in a summer field, but still remember the butterfly. It may be because of the color, the motion, or the timing. Or it may be because butterflies seem to arrive already carrying a quiet message, even when that message cannot be put easily into words. So human love for butterflies is not only about appearance, though appearance matters. It is also about what butterflies awaken in the mind. They remind us of seasons, of childhood, of patience, of change, and of how quickly something lovely can pass through our lives. And maybe that is the best place to end. not only with the science of what a butterfly is, but with the quieter feeling of what a butterfly life seems to mean. By the end of tonight, the butterfly may no longer feel like just a pretty insect passing through a garden. It may feel more like a small expression of how strange and gentle life can be. What first seemed simple has slowly opened into something much deeper. A butterfly is light, but it is not shallow. It is delicate, but it is not empty. Within that small drifting body is an entire story of change, structure, survival, and quiet wonder. It begins so modestly. A butterfly starts as an egg, resting almost invisibly on a leaf or stem. From that still beginning comes the caterpillar, a form devoted to eating and growth. Then comes another stillness, the chrysalis, where the body is reorganized in secret. And from that hidden transformation comes the adult butterfly, unfolding into air and light. Few life stories are so familiar in outline and yet so astonishing when truly considered. And perhaps that is part of what makes the butterfly so moving. Its life is built from contrasts that somehow belong together. It begins on a leaf and ends among flowers. It starts by crawling and ends by flying. It spends one part of life chewing leaves and another sipping nectar. It lives close to the ground, then rises into open space. One continuous life holds all of this. The butterfly also carries more hidden complexity than it first appears to. It can taste with its feet, using tiny sensors on its legs to test the world beneath it. It can see parts of light that human eyes cannot naturally see. Its wings are covered in scales so small they seem almost like dust, and those scales do more than add color. They interact with light itself, helping create some of the beauty we notice so quickly. So even the butterfly's surface is full of depth. And then there are the journeys. Some butterflies remain close to the places where they hatch, living out their lives within a smaller range of plants, flowers, and shelter. Others move across astonishing distances, following the turning seasons over land that seems far too large for them. In one butterfly we may see stillness and locality. In another, migration and endurance. Both belong to the same wider pattern of life. What makes all of this even more meaningful is that a butterfly never exists alone. Its life connects leaves, flowers, sunlight, weather, predators, and human attention. It depends on host plants when young and flowering plants when grown. It may feed birds and help carry pollen. It rises and falls with the health of habitats around it. Even such a gentle-looking creature is part of a much larger web. And still, despite all this complexity, what we feel when we see a butterfly is often something very simple. We feel softness. We feel pause. We feel that life can sometimes be both brief and beautiful without needing to be grand or loud. A butterfly does not force its way into our attention. It arrives lightly. It may pass by in silence. It may rest for only a few seconds before moving on. Yet it often leaves a deeper impression than larger, louder creatures do. Perhaps that is because butterflies gather so many truths into one small life. They remind us that change can be real and still gentle. That survival can look graceful from the outside. That something delicate may still be strong enough for its own kind of journey. That hidden structures and invisible signals can shape what we think of as beauty. The butterfly does not explain these truths in words. It simply lives them. And maybe That is why people have loved butterflies for so long. Not only because they are colorful, or calm to watch, or linked with warm seasons, but because they seem to carry a kind of quiet meaning with them. They make the natural world feel both more peaceful and more mysterious at the same time. So the next time a butterfly crosses your path, it may feel a little different. Not larger exactly, but deeper. A small life moving lightly through the air, carrying far more mystery than it first appears to hold.